A Dallas rapper was murdered outside his car on I-35 near the Dallas Zoo. 5 years later, his mother is still visiting his grave alone, still singing to his headstone, still sitting through court hearing after court hearing, while the man accused of arranging her son's death remains free on bond. This is the story of Nicole Williams Noble, and how her life has looked in the years since that November afternoon changed everything. Melvin Noble, known to the world as Mo3, was born May 31, 1992, in McKinney, Texas, and raised in North Dallas, a city that doesn't always get its proper credit in the hip-hop conversation. He dropped his debut mixtape, Shot Taz, in 2014, and built a following the old-fashioned way, through consistency, relatability, and lyrics that sounded like he was talking directly to people who'd lived exactly what he was describing. In a 2016 interview with the Dallas Observer, he said it himself: "No designer cars, no fabricated flex, just the reality of poverty and struggle and what it takes to survive both." By the time he linked with Boozy Badazz, it made complete sense. Two artists who built their audiences on unfiltered honesty. Their 2019 remix of Everybody racked up more than 50 million views, and their joint album landed on the Billboard 200 in early 2020. Mo3 was selling out shows. His single Broken Love with Kevin Gates would eventually go double platinum. The night before he died, he posted a preview of a sold-out Indianapolis show on Instagram. On a Wednesday afternoon that November, just before noon, a black Camaro pulled alongside his car on I-35E near the Dallas Zoo. A man in a ski mask got out with a rifle. Mo3 ran. The gunman chased him down the highway, firing multiple times. A bystander in a nearby vehicle was also struck. Mo3 was pronounced dead at the hospital. He was 28. A Dallas police sergeant told the Dallas Morning News he couldn't find a better word for it than brazen. Broad daylight, traffic all around, a man chased down and killed on an active interstate. To understand what his mother has been carrying since that day, you have to understand what came before it. Mo3's father left the family when he was young, leaving Nicole to raise him alone through genuinely desperate circumstances. Stretches without enough money for rent or food, nights on patios, meals of noodles or nothing at all, asking bars and cafes if they could just step inside to charge a phone. Mo3 talked about this publicly for the rest of his life, including the guilt he carried over how his own early involvement in street life had disrupted his mother's household. That guilt is part of what drove him toward music as hard as he pursued it. He wanted to get her out of that life. And by 2020, with sold-out shows and a platinum record on the way, he was doing exactly that. He was the return on everything she'd sacrificed. Then he was gone. That's the weight Nicole has carried since November 11th, 2020. Not just losing a son, but losing him at the exact moment their shared story was finally supposed to have a good ending. When he was buried later that month at Ridgeview Memorial Park in Allen, Texas, she wasn't just saying goodbye to her child. She was watching the ending they'd both earned get taken from her in broad daylight on a highway. What's followed hasn't been a grief that moves through predictable stages. Nicole has been at her son's grave more times than most people visit relatives who are still alive, showing up with balloons and flowers, singing to his headstone, speaking to him directly. None of it staged, none of it polished, just a mother doing the only thing left available to her. Those moments have circulated widely online, and they land differently than typical celebrity grief content because there's nothing performed about them. People who watch say they can't get through the videos without crying, that she reminds them of their own mothers, that she makes the cost of violence feel real in a way news coverage never quite manages. Without ever seeking the role, Nicole has become one of the clearest public images of what it actually looks like to survive a child's murder long after the cameras have moved on to something else. Surviving it is one thing. Being forced to keep reliving it in a courtroom is another entirely. And the legal case connected to Mo3's death has never made that easy. Investigators arrested Kewan Dantrell White weeks after the shooting as the alleged gunman. A second man, Devin Maurice Brown, was indicted the following year. White pleaded guilty to a federal firearms charge tied to the shooting and was sentenced to nearly 9 years in federal prison, while Brown's case moved through the courts separately. Each development meant Nicole had to re-engage with her son's final moments all over again. Then, in March 2025, nearly 5 years after the murder, everything escalated. A Dallas County grand jury indicted rapper Maris Conway, known as Yella Beezy, on capital murder for remuneration, alleging he didn't pull the trigger himself, but paid Kewan White to carry out the killing. Investigators pointed to a long-running feud between Conway and Mo3 dating back to 2017, one that had escalated through diss tracks, social media confrontations, and a 2018 shooting that left Conway himself wounded. Prosecutors allege that within days of Mo3's murder, Conway withdrew $40,000 in cash, money they believe financed the hit. Conway was arrested, released on a $750,000 bond, and has pleaded not guilty ever since. The moment that arrest broke, Nicole posted 4 words on Facebook: "Justice for my baby." No lengthy statement, just 4 words carrying everything she'd been holding for years. It was shared more than 1,600 times within hours. But the arrest didn't close anything for her. It opened a new chapter of the same ordeal. Conway's defense has fought aggressively, and in early 2026, the trial was delayed after his team cited more than 16 terabytes of evidence they needed time to review. At one pretrial hearing, Conway himself wasn't even present, excused because his own mother had recently passed away. An irony not lost on anyone who's watched Nicole attend hearing after hearing for years, with no such reprieve. The trial is now scheduled for August 24, 2026, nearly 6 years after Mo3 was killed. Part of what's dragged this out is an ongoing fight over whether Conway's own song lyrics can be used against him at trial. Prosecutors argue several tracks reference paying for violence and putting a bounty on someone's head, while the defense counters that juries interpret rap lyrics far more literally than they would identical language in any other genre. The judge hadn't ruled on that question as of this writing, but every one of these hearings means Mo3's final days, his death, and the footage of his last moments keep getting played out and debated in courtrooms while his mother waits. Nicole hasn't only been fighting for accountability in the criminal case. In 2023, Mo3's estate filed a federal copyright lawsuit against his former sound engineer, who allegedly refused to return his music files after his death and had even filed copyrights on recordings that weren't his. In 2025, a jury ruled in the estate's favor, and a federal judge returned full control of Mo3's catalog, 78 released tracks, and 51 unreleased recordings, back to his family. The estate said the win existed to preserve his legacy for his 3 young children, the same kids he used to post on Instagram, the ones now growing up without him. Through all of it, Mo3's music has only grown. Broken Love went double platinum. His posthumous album, released in early 2021, charted higher than anything he put out while he was alive. Every November 11th, his name trends. Every May 31st, his birthday, fans flood social media with tributes and stream his catalog through the night. That kind of sustained devotion is rare even in hip-hop, where artists who die young are often mourned intensely and then gradually fade. Mo3 hasn't faded, but for Nicole, that permanence cuts both ways. Every new listener who discovers his music also discovers how he died, and every fresh wave of attention is another reminder of exactly what was taken from her. Grief researchers describe this kind of loss, sudden, violent, public, as something that doesn't move toward closure so much as reshape itself around the person left behind. For Nicole, that's been the reality for 5 years straight. Through 5 birthdays, she's marked publicly at his graveside, refusing to let the date pass unnoticed. She hasn't been entirely alone in it either. The Dallas community has organized tributes and memorials every year since his death, and Boozy Badazz has spoken publicly about his friend and collaborator on multiple occasions, keeping his name in the conversation. That support matters. Isolation is one of grief's cruelest companions, but it can't substitute for what she's actually still waiting on: a verdict, accountability, a moment where she can finally say the process is over. That moment hasn't come yet. It's set for a Dallas County courtroom in August 2026, 6 years after her son ran down an interstate and didn't make it out alive. Mo3 deserved more than 28 years. His mother deserves peace. And the fact that she's still fighting for it this many years later is the story worth telling here. If you haven't heard his music, go listen. Go find Broken Love. Go find the tracks that made all of Dallas stop and pay attention before the rest of the country caught up. Because that voice is still here, and for a mother who visits a grave with flowers because it's the only conversation she has left, that's one of the few things that still makes any of this feel like it meant something.